there, thanks for tuning into Duckbricks. I'm Chris, and with the release of the beautiful new LEGO Art Sunflower set, I thought it'd be a cool idea to go through history and take a look at all of the different LEGO art sets throughout the years. While you may know LEGO art sets as popularized from the most recent LEGO mosaics, from Iron Man to Star Wars Darth Vader and the Beatles and even Marilyn Monroe, there have been a lot of interesting LEGO art themed sets going all the way back in history, and I thought it'd be a cool time to take a look at all of them and see how LEGO art has evolved over the years. Despite being popularized with some of the most beautiful LEGO art sculptures we see today, LEGO art had very humble beginnings, going all the way back to the 1950s and 1980s. I actually do own a couple of these items, like the Dacta mosaic sets, which of course eventually became Duplo in the 1980s, 1985, 87, and 88. In the early 2000s, we started to get some stud-based LEGO mosaics, utilizing 1x1 square stud pieces, where you can see you could actually use your pieces to create a mosaic of your child or yourself, and then we had a couple of direct-to-consumer sets in 2003 that you could order direct from Lego.com, with a mosaic of a cat, a dino from Adventures, Johnny Thunder also from Adventures, as well as a tiger. These are very basic black and white mosaics, but really got the point across and laid the groundwork for what LEGO was going to be doing with mosaics going forwards into the future. From there, we had a couple of LEGO education sets. There were even some creator sets in 2007, which focused on mosaics and allowing you to build your own creations. Duplo got in on the fun, and from there was kind of a dearth of mosaics. Outside of a number of promotional items like these Toys R Us Batman and Superman items to celebrate the relaunch of DC superheroes, we didn't get a mosaic focus set until the personalized mosaic portrait, which was introduced in the Leicester Square LEGO store in 2016 and eventually spread to a lot of the other flagship LEGO stores. Let's take a look at one of those right now. One of the first modern LEGO mosaics before they even debuted the LEGO art subtheme is this. Well, this technically is not the official configuration of this art set, because there is no official configuration. This was a build-your-own mosaic set released as initially a test pilot in certain parts of the world in LEGO stores, from the LEGO store in Billund and then later on in New York, and now it's available in other flagship LEGO experiences like the experience in London and Australia. But essentially how this worked is that you went into a booth inside the LEGO store, took a photo of yourself, and this one of course I took with myself and my stuffed animal Duckity, who's the mascot of this channel, in case you're wondering what the little blob on the side here is. And what it would do is generate instructions for you to transform your face into a mosaic. This is a bit different from a lot of the other LEGO art sets because, first of all, it's just using the standard 48x48 base plate, meaning that it is a little floppy in the way that it's set up. There's no easy way to mount it to the wall, and it's made out of the 1x1 square studs instead of the rounded ones, which I guess makes a little bit more sense for a mosaic in the traditional sense. But one thing that we're about to notice when we get over to the other LEGO art sets is that they actually look a lot better when you use the rounded studs instead of the square ones. It's very rudimentary as it is. It could only do it as a black and white portrait, so you have a yellow background and you have the black and white actual face, because they really were only able to include just a ton of light gray, dark gray, black, white, and yellow bricks in the set, but I think it works well for what it is, albeit a little bit dated, especially compared to the absolutely stunning LEGO art sets they can now put out. From there, we got into a lot of other promotional items. Captain America for Toys R Us, Iron Man for the Singaporean Hulkbuster Ultron Edition release, and the Harry Potter and Hermione mosaics also only for the Singaporean Hogwarts Castle releases. We even got one for Emmett from the LEGO Movie 2 for Welcome to Apocalypseburg, as well as another one for Iron Man in 2018. But from there, fast forward to 2020, and that was the official launch of the LEGO Art subtheme. And this is where things get crazy. LEGO Art officially kicked off in 2020 with the launch of 4 major mosaics, the first of which is 31199 Marvel Studios Iron Man. It retailed for $120 and came with 3,167 pieces, and the entire gimmick behind these mosaic sets was that you could buy multiple copies to depict different versions of the characters. So for instance, you have the different iterations of the Iron Man suit, like the Mark 85 from Endgame, the Mark 44, or the Mark 3. And even better, you could actually combine 3 copies of the mosaics to have one gigantic piece of artwork. I'm a big fan of Iron Man, so I had to basically build every single version of this set that you could. And the crazy thing is, they provided enough pieces that I didn't even need to buy 6 different copies. I made do with 5 and just got the base plates for 1 extra part of the mosaics because that was just the easiest way to put them together. Altogether, it was a really strong start, and LEGO Art started off with a bang, showcasing how good LEGO mosaics could look. Some of these combined models were really tall, like this Darth Vader combined model made by purchasing 3 copies of the Sith art set. When placed on the ground, it comes up to a little above my waist, which is a really tall height for a mosaic like this, and it's really cool to see it depict something that is a more long and vertical art piece. You can clearly see Darth Vader with the lightsaber framing him right here, alongside even parts of the chest, and I really like how they were able to do something more unique and creative with this particular art piece, and how the Iron Man one decided to rotate things on its side instead of like this. I wanted to put myself in here because I feel like it's kind of hard to get a sense of scale without seeing this next to someone, and yeah, this is an example of a really tall art piece. And one thing that I do kind of miss from the current LEGO art sets, instead of doing things by paint by the number studs, they've kind of moved past that and evolved the theme, but we then miss out on really gigantic pieces of art like this, which just look really cool. The set you're looking at there is 31200 Star Wars The Sith, allowing you to build Darth Vader, Darth Maul, Kylo Ren, or that massive vertical mosaic of Darth Vader. Altogether, this was another really good selection for a mosaic set, especially because you could build different characters, arguably making it even more interesting than the Iron Man one. But there were a couple of other mosaics introduced around this time that had basically the same exact format that I actually chose to rebuild into my own creations. 31197 was Andy Warhol's Marilyn Monroe, a very famous piece of artwork, also allowing you to build it 4 different times. However, I decided to follow the unofficial alternate models designed by Nick aka Prince Galador on Twitter, which reimagined the set as a set of 6 original Bionicle Kanohi masks, which was certainly a lot more up my alley. Speaking of up my alley though, there was one other set, which was the Beatles set. This allowed you to build all 4 Beatles, set number 31198, but instead I used the pieces to create a mosaic of my personal favorite musician, Duck Bricks. Another cute one that is one of my favorites is this one right here. It was marketed as an art project, meaning that you could basically take each of the different quadrants of the base plates they introduced and do your own type of artwork in each quadrant, so you can kind of build it as a family, but I chose to build it in this official configuration, which is of course a classic spaceman, which means that yes, there was an official LEGO art mosaic of a classic spaceman. This was one of the many different things you could make with it, and this one just made the most sense to me to make. It is a really cool design. I actually really like the way they pulled it off with the dark blue and black starry background, and then you have the white spaceman utilizing actually quite a lot of brown to showcase the shading and the coloring of it. It's done really nicely and really reflects the light reflecting off of this minifigure, and it also has a white border as opposed to the more kind of stylistic and maybe more adult-oriented black borders of the other art sets. It's cool they were trying out different things here, and LEGO Art would only get even crazier. LEGO Art soon branched off into different licenses, and with that came a very large display piece. This is the end result of combining 4 copies of the LEGO Hogwarts Houses set for Harry Potter into one massive Hogwarts logo display. It's actually really cool because you had the chance to either build your house of choice, Gryffindor, Slytherin, Hufflepuff, or Ravenclaw, in a build that was about the 4th the size of this, or buy 4 copies of the set and combine them into this massive Hogwarts crest mosaic, which of course is what I did. I decided to go with this one because I felt like it really represented Harry Potter as a whole. Of course the H stands for Hogwarts, but it really does also represent just Harry Potter in general, and I think it's a really nice piece of art. It really feels like something that is more regal that you would want to hang up. The only downside is that this does waste a lot of pieces. You get a lot of green, red, gold, and blue pieces that pretty much just are not going to be used unless you decided to make one particular version of the model. But thankfully I decided to go with the combiner. The Hogwarts Crest set 31201 retailed for $120 and came with 4,249 pieces, although of course many of those are just the 1x1 studs. It came with that many because it had to include all the different crest colors alongside the same exact set, which is pretty wild to me that they just basically released one set that had enough pieces to build all four. But moving on from that, there were even more. 31202 was Disney's Mickey Mouse. You could buy 2 copies to make this dual display of Mickey Mouse and Minnie Mouse, which you can see right here. And then we move on to what is still the largest LEGO set ever by piece count. 31203 was the world map containing 11,695 pieces, beating out the Eiffel Tower, which has 10,001. It doesn't really count as the largest set in my opinion because, first of all of those pieces are basically just 1x1 tiles, and it comes with a ton of leftovers to change around the way you want the topography and the details of the map to be shown, but it is still a behemoth of a model. And I liked it so much, I bought a second copy and once again utilized Nick Voss's instructions on Twitter to make a Bionicle Mana Nui map mosaic instead. From there, we got an Elvis Presley LEGO mosaic, which was 31204, and we got 31205, the Jim Lee Batman collection. This could be rebuilt in a number of different ways. There was a dual mosaic if you bought 2 copies featuring Batman and Catwoman. There was a triple mosaic if you wanted to have 3 of them going down featuring Batman himself in silhouette. I chose to only do 2 mosaics here and make it vertical because I didn't really care about the rest of it just featuring the utility belt. And then you could actually create Harley Quinn and the Joker and a regular mosaic of Batman as well. It was again wild just how many pieces they were able to stash into this one set to allow you to build it in different ways. And finally, 31206 branched out from pure mosaics with the Rolling Stones. This was a really interesting build for LEGO Art to finally branch out and give us something brand new. What's interesting is that you can actually see a logo made of mosaics 1x1 that you create underneath all these plates and then literally just cover up to celebrate the anniversary of the Rolling Stones. It's a little weird to me how they basically have you put in all that effort to make something you're never going to see, but I guess it did still stick within the mosaic category. And then finally, 31207 was the floral art mosaic, one of the smallest ones so far at only $80, and then we move on to more stuff. Here's another of my favorites. This is Hokusai the Great Wave art set, and this is one of the art sets that really started to push the boundaries of what they were doing with the theme. Instead of it just being a paint-by-number sort of display, which is admittedly what most of the background is made up of, they really started to go into the 3D with this art piece, crafting the waves out of a series of plates, utilizing interesting LEGO elements like these little birds to act as the tips of the waves, and this is really where LEGO Art started to experiment with being more than just standard mosaics, and in my opinion, for the better. 31208 Hokusai the Great Wave was just the beginning of LEGO recreating actual art pieces in LEGO brick-built form, but we'll table that for now and take a look at 31209, The Amazing Spider-Man. This was a very dynamic piece of art, and it really was a clear sign that LEGO was wanting to branch out from what they were doing with standard mosaics and do something unique. You have the iconic Kirby crackle around the mosaic, which I guess is the closest to a standard mosaic in terms of 1x1 studs, but everything else was fully crafted using dynamic pieces. Curves, adjustable fingers, and movable head, Spider-Man literally crawling out of the frame. This was a clear sign that LEGO Art was branching out and doing things very differently. And speaking of different, let's take a look at the next set. Next up might be our strangest piece of art yet. This is the Modern Art LEGO set, and it's certainly very different than the other pieces of art. You see, they were trying to depict modern art by having you piece together a bunch of different shapes, a number of which aren't even present on the final build, and then try to just make something with them. Here you can see the default configuration is a face. I guess if you kind of squint you can see a face there, but there are some that are even more abstract. I actually think this is a pretty cool concept for a set, but I have to wonder who the target audience is for this and how well this set did, because it is just so different than everything else we've gotten from LEGO Art, which is a lot more traditional. Still, it is really fun. It was a lot of fun to put together, and you basically end up with a lot of really useful pieces, even if you don't want to actually put it together into this art piece. So altogether, I think this is just a really interesting outlier that is still a very valuable and very well done modern LEGO art set. From modern art, we launched into the fauna collection Macaw Parrots. 31211 was a somewhat 2D iteration of two different parrots, yellow and pink, which you can mount on your wall. It was an interesting mix of nature and even a bit of botanicals thrown in with the branches around the yellow parrot, as well as, of course, officially being in the LEGO art theme. It released in 2024, just last year, for $60 and 644 pieces, and I actually think that's fairly decent value for what you get. It was a fascinating building experience, putting this together, utilizing studs on the side techniques, trying to craft the shaping of the bird, and the only thing I will say is the coloration of those cool yellow pieces just isn't quite consistent enough. Upon close inspection, you can really see they didn't get the color quite down. But then we can take a look at one of my personal favorite LEGO art sets they've released so far, and that is 31212, the Milky Way Galaxy. This was the closest to going back to an individual stud mosaic by having just so many individual little tiny pieces being used, but the entire end result of the set is absolutely gorgeous. It's utilizing a number of different elements, from slopes to little alien pieces and batters and horns and flowers and ferns and all sorts of different individual glittery elements to make up the Milky Way. Just one of the most stunning LEGO art sets they've ever done. LEGO Art delves once more into classical paintings with the beautiful Mona Lisa set, which released just last year. Now this is honestly a pretty controversial set, and a lot of that boils down to the way they captured Mona Lisa's facial expression. In fact, they include additional pieces if you do not want to have the eyes and mouth printed, and basically just keep it blank, in case you prefer that look better, although that to me is even more creepy than how it actually looks. Honestly, seeing this in person from most angles, I don't think it's necessarily that bad, although I do see why some people would feel like it kind of falls into that uncanny valley, but face aside, the rest of the portrait is really well done. It's unlike a lot of the other art sets where even the background is using a variety of different tiles and plates, especially some newer wedge elements which just absolutely look fantastic when crafting the background behind the painting, and I really like how there is a 3D dimension to it. The neck kind of ever so slightly bends outwards at a slight angle, which really helps sell the illusion of this being a painting that's kind of popping out of the frame. And speaking of the frame, this is definitely the coolest frame we got for any LEGO art set, with the drum lacquered gold elements being utilized across the entire border. It is really beautifully done, and absolutely my favorite frame they've ever made for something like this. And from there, we kicked off 2025 with an actual sculpture for LEGO art, which was the first time we got something of its nature. 31214, simply titled Love, retailed for $80 and launched with 791 pieces, which is fair for the number of pieces you get, and it represented a famous love statue that you can see in spots all around the world. This was a particularly poignant build for me because I went to college at UPenn and we literally had one of these on campus, so it was really cool being able to actually build it out of LEGO, and it looks so perfect compared to the real thing. This is one of my favorite LEGO art sets, and obviously I am biased here. I have a lot of emotional connection to this statue. I took my graduation photos sitting literally on top of the O's, so this is definitely a very special set for me. I had to display it in my city, and I will say the building techniques are really impressive. I was genuinely surprised by just how much they could get out of the shaping for especially the O and the V using just standard LEGO pieces. It was really well done. But we can now go on to one of the more recent LEGO art sets, which is the Sunflower set. Wow, this might be the best LEGO art set yet. I definitely think a strong argument can be made that this is the most intricate, the most beautiful, and the most fully realized, that combines a lot of the lessons learned from previous LEGO art set and just puts them into an absolutely beautiful canvas. I just love how 3D this is while still retaining the exact dimensions and look and feel of the original painting. Putting it together was such a blast as well. There are all sorts of intricate building techniques factored into here. It feels very dense. It feels like there's a lot going on here, and it's genuinely just one of the most beautiful LEGO sets ever released. This is a really high note to end this on, but of course, The LEGO Art series is not going anywhere. I'm sure in a few years I'll be doing another version of this video with maybe even double or triple the amount of art sets, because art has been one of the most popular LEGO icons and 18+ sub-theme of brands, and this is no exception. I saw a lot of people who were absolutely thrilled to get this set, myself included, and I'm personally really curious what LEGO will do going forwards. I'd love to see LEGO branch out to more and more subjects in LEGO art. Give us an art piece from one of your original themes, or give us like a different Star Wars art piece that maybe is like a movie poster. In fact, movie posters as art sets would be a really cool idea. I'd also love to see just different types of artwork as well, different artists, different styles, different time periods. Just go all in, because if the result is gonna look anything like this, I'm all for it. Here's a close-up look at all the details that make up the absolutely gorgeous Vincent van Gogh Sunflower set. It retailed for $200 and came with 2,615 pieces, and for me personally, I think it really translates to LEGO well. I've actually talked to a few people who feel like it doesn't really translate perfectly, and I can see what they mean, but if you were to make it out of LEGO bricks, I think this is the best you could do. But wait, there's more. Releasing in June, we have an early look at a couple more LEGO art sets, starting off with 31216 Keith Haring Dancing Figures. It's based off of the iconic piece of Dancing Figures artwork, coming with 1,773 parts and retailing for $120 US. At first glance, I had absolutely no idea how these 5 figures took up so many pieces. 1,700 some pieces is a lot of parts to be used, but after building it, it totally makes sense. These are remarkably intricate builds. In order to actually accomplish all of the very unique angles and shaping on all of the limbs for the figures, there's a lot of really intricate clips and hinges and connections being used here to make them feel smooth and clean while still having the actual fully brick-built LEGO look. It's genuinely a really impressive build. Would I normally spend $120 on something like this though? I really don't know. I think the value is what you make of it. The good thing is though, it does come with these posable stands which you can use to pose the figures upright, or you can do what I do with almost all my LEGO items and mount them on the wall, which I've done here. It actually looks really satisfying to have all of these mounted on the wall. I have them vertically because that's just where the space made sense to put them in my apartment in New York, but it really does work for the designs here. You can see that all of the figures are their own unique colors, their own unique shapes. I really like how they actually showcase the motion around them as well, utilizing some curved elements and even just 1x2 plates to accomplish the feeling of movement around all of these dancing characters. But this isn't the only new LEGO art set we're taking a look at today. 31217 continues the fauna collection started last year, simply titled Tiger. Retailing for $65, it comes with 744 pieces, and this one is honestly just alright for me. I think the composition is pretty neat, and I like how LEGO is making a unique piece of artwork, but the flowers do feel fairly simplistic, especially after what we're used to from the botanical collection. The tiger itself though is quite nice. They've really captured the face incredibly nicely, and it even comes with a stand to allow you to prop it up on the back of a table, although of course you can mount it to the wall, which is obviously what I did. The building techniques were remarkably simple for this. As opposed to the Keith Haring figures, which surprised me in their complexity, I was kind of surprised by just how simple this was, just layering pieces one on top of the other, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I will say the building experience wasn't quite as interesting as I thought it would be. The final result though is pretty nice. It's just maybe not my favorite art piece, it's just not one of the super interesting ones to me personally, but I can see why somebody who is a fan of tigers, maybe somebody who has tigers as a culturally significant item in their lives, would really love to get something like this. But with that, we have wrapped up all of the items in the official LEGO Art subtheme. But there are a few honorable mentions I wanted to call out, because there are a lot of art adjacent sets that are parts of their own theme that technically are not LEGO art sets, but I feel are basically, for all intents and purposes, art sets, like the Batman animated series Gotham Skyline. You've got the LEGO Ideas Tales from the Space Age set here, depicting some wall-mounted graphics, which is a really clean display, a very unique item for a LEGO set, depicting different parts of space. And of course you have the LEGO Ideas Vincent van Gogh Starry Night. This is undoubtedly an art set, and it would have been in the LEGO art theme if it wasn't part of the LEGO Ideas theme, so it really does follow there. Some of the ones that are a little bit looser are the Marvel Captain America shield. I mean, you can kind of mount it to the wall and it does kind of look like art. Same with the Marvel logo, it is very much a Marvel thing, but I feel like you can kind of count it as an art set, being a brick-built, letter buildable logo. And of course, we did just get the LEGO Star Wars logo as well just this past May, which I would also maybe count as kind of art adjacent. As you get on longer, you kind of start to stretch things a little bit further, like the Harry Potter banners are definitely more playsets than art sets, although technically you can mount them to your walls. They have interiors, but yes, they do act as display sets and art pieces you can mount to your walls, so I would kind of count them as very, very similar to art sets, but certainly not art sets in their own right. And if you want to get really crazy, there have been a number of bat wings that you can mount to your wall, although I definitely don't count those as art sets, as well as the Disney 100 Years mosaic, which actually does kind of feel a lot closer to an art set. And there's one more. Of course, I had to end the video with this one. It is Family Travel Moments, and it was the LEGO Masters set inspired by my winning LEGO Masters Season 4 build, which was the giant World Wonderliner airplane. While the set deviated a lot from my final build, which was a gigantic airplane, we did still get a small airplane included in the set, but I do actually feel like this kind of counts as an art set because you can mount it to the wall, and it acts almost like a mosaic style display of the world map. One of my favorite things to do with this set is to mount photos around it. You can see in my apartment I've put up a ton of fond memories of around the years with all my friends and family, which is really what the set is designed for as an art installation in your home. I think the perfect way to end this video is to celebrate not just the official LEGO art sets, but also celebrate what the community has done since the advent of LEGO art. Everybody had been making mosaics out of LEGO for years and years. LEGO was not the first to come up with this concept, but I feel like the LEGO art set sparked a renaissance of LEGO mosaic making, where one of my favorite websites of all time, the LEGO Art Remix site, was spawned out of these sets, where you could basically input in your image or whatever you want to turn into a LEGO mosaic, and you could choose what color studs you want, you could pick from existing sets. It was really great. Even myself, I was inspired to create my own LEGO art mosaics, like this map of Motunui from LEGO Bionicle, which is probably indecipherable to anybody not familiar with Bionicle, but hopefully Bionicle fans can kind of see what I was going for with this one, and all of this was made possible by that site. I think it's just really cool to see people starting to make art pieces of their own, and it's really simple to pick up. You don't need to be the most skilled mockist in the world to be able to make something like this. They provided a template in which anybody could create an art piece of their own, which I think is really cool. At this stage, LEGO art is one of those themes that it really feels like they can do anything they want with it. If they wanted to depict a famous licensed character, they can do it. If they want to do something in the fauna collection with an animal or some sort of object, they can do that as well. Or if they want to recreate an actual piece of real-world artwork, they've done it a ton of times. Some better than others, but I really do appreciate LEGO trying new things and adapting famous pieces of art. This is something that I feel will last and persist for years and years. It definitely is a staple of the LEGO adult-oriented icons collection, especially for the actual historical art piece recreations, which I'm sure a lot of people would love to display in their homes. And overall, I'm a big fan of the art theme. I like how diverse it is. I like how every release you never really know what you're going to get until the sets come out, whether it be a painting or pop art or a fauna collection or some sort of miscellaneous art piece they make, or a pop culture item with Spider-Man or Batman or the Marvel superheroes. It is such a diverse and ubiquitous theme. You can use it for a lot of different things, and that's really why I wanted to highlight this celebration and history of LEGO art. Many thanks to LEGO for sending me the 3 latest LEGO art sets, the Sunflowers one, the dancing figures, and the tiger, and of course all of the views expressed in this video are my own, and every single other art set expressed, aka the vast majority of this video, I chose to buy myself and build, and that is something that shows that I genuinely really like this theme, and I can't wait to see what else we get in the future. That's all for this video. Thank you so much for tuning in, and let me know in the comments, are there famous pieces of art that you want to see recreated in LEGO form? Which ones do you own out of the sets showcased here, and which are your favorites or least favorites? Thanks all so much for tuning in. I'll talk to you again very soon, and bye for now.